And this is another redox reaction. That is how methane combustion as an energy yield redox reaction. And here, if you want, you can see again, and you can see how the methane becomes oxidized. And remember, if it's oxidized, it's because it loses electrons. So look how the carbon had all the electrons very in the middle, while in the CO2 they are going to be far. So this one they are close, and here they are farther. So the carbon is being oxidized because it's losing the electrons. On the other hand, you can see that the oxygen turned into water. So it's the opposite case of the photosynthesis. So here they were far, and here now the oxygen has the electron very close, so they are closer. So in this case, this molecule become reduced. And remember, so that in this case, the methane is considered the. In future classes, we will study how do plants use these redox reactions to store energy. So they will use sunlight and they acquire these protons in a part of photosynthesis called light capturing reactions. They will break the water, they do hydrolysis to produce this ATP and NADPH molecule that we will study in a second. And as a result, these ATP and NADPH molecules, they will be used during the Calvin cycle that we will fixate CO2 from the environment to produce carbohydrates. And all of this is using redox reaction. And later we will study how cell respiration is the same reaction but in an opposite direction. Something important is that although in this reaction, in this formula, we took CO2 and we turned it into glucose, this doesn't happen in one chemical reaction. There are many multiple reactions. And why this is important? Because the photosynthesis, here I told you there were two steps, but actually it's an stepwise. There are a series, multiple steps. And we will explain why there are multiple steps, because it's very important that there are various steps to be able to harvest energy. So again, this is a stepwise energy harvest, and is and we will talk about in a second what this is, what is this molecule, and why there is an electron transport change. And to start talking about this, why there are so many steps instead of one single step, I want to show you this schematic that is in your textbook. What they are doing is turning hydrogen and mixing it with oxygen in a single reaction to produce water. And when you do this kind of reaction, under certain circumstances, you can produce an explosive release of heat and energy. So most of the energy is going to be lost in form of heat and energy. And now something similar that happened during chemical reaction in living organisms, you take again hydrogen and oxygen from the food via this molecule that we will talk in a second, and we use these multiple steps that we will talk in a second, that is this electron transport change that is used both in photosynthesis as well as cellular respiration, and we will have enzymes and proteins transporting the electrons. And what is happening is, well, this one was explosive release of energy. Here we're going to have a controlled release of energy, and we're going to synthesize ATP. So in this case, well, this one was an uncontrolled reaction. This was a cellular respiration reaction. This is why we have so many steps because we can control the reaction, and instead of the energy being lost, here we can collect it and turn it into ATP. I told you that in an uncontrolled reaction, all energy will be released at once, and it will be mainly released in terms of heat and light. And the electron transport change, these enzymes and proteins that are drawn in an schematic here, allow to releasing energy in a controlled way by passing electrons in a series of small steps. And this is the second thing that I wanted you to remember, this electron transport change that we will study again in photosynthesis as well as cellular respiration. Now, I want to talk about this NADH molecule because it's very important because it allows that this multi-step process take place. And I just remind you that not only in photosynthesis, but also in cellular respiration, the molecules can break down in multiple steps. And to do that, we have this molecule. I want to show you this diagram. And I don't know if you can identify the different components of this. So here you have a nucleotide. Here you have a carbohydrate. This case is a pentose. Here you have another carbohydrate, and here you have, and this is very important, a phosphate group that make this molecule very electronegative. And why is so important? Because as it's so electronegative, it's going to be looking for hydrogens to accept. And this will be key. So electrons from organic compounds are usually first transferred to this NAD plus. So this is important. So remember two things that I said in this slide, that during cellular respiration, organic molecules such as glucose are broken in a small series of steps. To produce those steps, you need this molecule called NAD plus in cellular respiration because it allows to transfer the electrons. Now, we're going to talk about the importance of this molecule, the NADA plus, the NADA reduction to produce this stepwise process. And as we can see here, using the enzyme, we can reduce it and turn it into NAD plus. And why this is so important? Because we will see that during cellular respiration and photosynthesis, we will need these electron transport, electron acceptors, because they function as an oxidizing agent, if you remember the redox. And both in cellular respiration and in photosynthesis, they will be very important. In both cases, you will see that we will create a gradient. We will have a lot of hydrogens that they will be transported inside of both chloroplast and mitochondria, and this gradient will have a protein that it will harness energy using this gradient. So this NADH plus is the way that we transfer, that we store the energy to put it inside of both organelles, and later we use it to synthesize ATP. So this molecule is very important, and in that way we don't lose as much energy. So to summarize, I'm going to have a slide to summarize everything. Here I told you that there were two types of reactions. Both produce the same amount of free energy. However, in this case, most of the energy is lost because it's released in heat and light. However, in living organisms through cellular respiration, as we have these molecules that allow us to make a stepwise harvest of energy, we can collect a lot of ATP. And Why? Because these molecules allow us to store the energy and to transfer it. So we will be talking about this electron transport change in a second in, in the following classes, because this NADH passes these high energy electrons, and where it passes to the electron transport change, that they will be located in both cases in the mitochondria and in the chloroplast, in the cell, in the membrane. And remember that these organelles have not one membrane but have several membranes. And in the membrane you will have proteins, both. And those proteins will transfer electrons. And those electrons, the NADH, will be inside. Both cases will be the same process. They will be inside, and you will have a lot of hydrogens, a lot of them. So you're going to create a gradient, and we will take advantage of what? Of oxygen. You remember that the oxygen is very electronegative? So in the following classes, I will show you that, and as the oxygen is a strong oxidizing agent, it will allow to pull all these electrons down, and as a result of that, we will be able to generate a lot of ATP. Okay, I don't want to be so repetitive, but I just find this topic very interesting. And if you have any doubt or any question, just let me know, and in class we will talk more about it. Have a good day, and we will talk later.